Hello, welcome back to Life on the Fringe. Um, we're trying to meet you today by going live. Usually, we post content every day that's edited and such, but I wanted to talk about this in a more unedited way because I'm still trying to form some opinions about what it's like to be queer and Catholic in light of the recent statements by the Vatican, basically saying that same-sex marriage will never be recognized by the church. And so to identify myself, for those of you who don't know me, as I said, my name is Franch, and I use she, her pronouns. I am a cisgender bisexual woman, and I'm also married to my husband, Stan, who is often featured but not seen in our videos. And I have a lot to say about Catholicism and queerness. I identify as Catholic, and I go to church. I was raised Catholic. My partner converted to Catholicism 2 years ago, but he had been converting before we started going out anyway. And we do hold faith as one of our strong points in our relationship. So hearing this from the Vatican, although it wasn't surprising, it was still upsetting. I think because when Pope Francis had made the statement earlier, an earlier statement rather, about supporting the legalization of civil unions between same-sex couples, and also welcoming same-sex couples and also queer people into the church and into the Catholic Church and into the community. I think that as a queer Catholic, it was something that was giving me a lot of hope, and it seemed pretty progressive. At the same time, I didn't expect for him in this short amount of time to allow for same-sex marriage in the church, but to hear such a definitive statement that was not needed from the Vatican was pretty upsetting. I think that although Catholicism is a religion that is around the world, and different countries have vastly different acceptance and tolerance for the queer community, I think that this was an opportunity for the Catholic Church to maintain hope for queer Catholics, and also ideally to even use their world influence to expand the rights and recognitions of queer people around the world. And instead, the statement gives credence to the unwelcoming and hostile treatment of queer people in other countries. And that's upsetting. Faith is supposed to guide you to do the right thing, even if it's difficult. And I really feel that this was a political move. It seems like Pope Francis's statements in the past seem that he is fine with it, but the Vatican as a whole is not. And Catholics are still somewhat divided in the US, but globally pretty opposed. So I think it was a political move, but that doesn't make it right, if that makes any sense. I also wanted to talk about this because I'm bisexual and married to a man. We are able to get married in the church this year, and it's been really weighing on me because it is obviously a bi privilege of being with a guy as a woman, and then others of my family members wouldn't be able to get married in the Catholic Church, so it just feels wrong. But at the same time, it's also allowed me to have conversations with people in my church and with our priest about my sexuality, and kind of showing by example that just because your sexuality might be different from straight, that you aren't worthy of love and you aren't able to have faith, and that you basically aren't welcome. And there were a number of things in the process of preparing for our marriage that were very frustrating as a bisexual person. Hold on. Jamie says, I think it's frustrating because outside of God, there is no justification for deeming homosexual immoral. And even within the church, they cherry pick. Well, I definitely agree with that. It's in Leviticus, and among the things in Leviticus are other rules that we don't follow at all. Mixed fabrics is one example. The separation of women when they're on their periods is another. We have certainly modified in the past which parts of the Bible we deem relevant and which we don't. And I think that the New Testament is one of love and inclusion and acceptance and tolerance. And it doesn't mesh with the homophobic stance of the church. The New Testament, Jesus is walking among, people who are sex workers, walking among the sick, the poor, and regarding them with equal dignity and respect as himself. And he's God. So it's just weird to think that as a Catholic that you can somehow not see people who are queer as equals, because I think that Jesus is able to. And also, the two biggest commandments are to love God and to love your neighbor as yourself from the New Testament. So it very much bothers me that this is such a focal point of Catholicism, and I think it's largely a result of the political changing tides. In the past, Catholics really didn't care about same-sex relations, like in the early years of Catholicism. And as it grew to be less and less accepted by society, Catholics just kind of adopted it. It's very strange. So I don't see why this is a big deal. But as I said, when we were getting ready for our marriage, you have to go through what's called PreKana. And basically, PreKana is an sort of like a workshop of multiple meetings, or you can do like a whole day-long seminar. But we went to multiple meetings where you learn about the faith, work out like how you're going to be in the couple, and it's meant to push you to have conversations with your spouse to make sure you've had those conversations before getting married, because Catholicism is against divorce in most cases. I mean, they do annul some marriages, but in general, it's seen as a binding contract. So basically, the process is meant to make sure that you're like ready to be with your partner. But one of the initial steps you do is you meet with your priest. And we're pretty close with our priest. And he baptized Stan. And Stan was a regular attendant before COVID of like extra church events. And we were there every Sunday. So we're pretty close to him. And so when we had this initial meeting, one of the things they have you do is take a multiple choice style. It's not really multiple choice. It's like a ranking of like agree to disagree. And there's like 5 options over like 100 questions. And you have to take them separately in separate rooms. And then the answers get sent off and compared. And where you have different answers, you discuss. But one of the questions that's on this questionnaire, which has been recently updated, is, do you suspect that your partner is gay? And I feel like that's a very weird question to be putting on a survey for Catholics, especially when, again, the view right now, as was recently reiterated by the Vatican, is that it is a choice to act on the power. Like, you have the choice whether or not to sleep with someone of the same sex, and some take it farther and say that you have the choice whether or not to be, cured, which is just a horrific stance to take and absolutely preposterous. But with the question, the reason I found it so frustrating was, so Stan and I both put no because of the word suspect. Obviously, Stan knows I'm bi. I know I'm bi. And I know that Stan is straight. We've had this conversation. But so we both put no because it's not a suspicion. And it was fine because we both put no. But in a later meeting, it had really been on my mind, because from a Catholic perspective, if it's a choice, if your partner, let's say I was a lesbian and I was Catholic and I felt that it was wrong to carry out my desires with women and would rather marry a man, wouldn't that be in line with what the church wants? So I'm not sure why I don't know why the question's there, because they're basically forcing you to marry someone of the opposite sex. But then they have a question on there about, well, do you think your partner is gay? I don't know. It's very weird. Um, and I don't know what they would say if you said yes. Like, what would their response be? Um, so as I said, it had been on my mind a lot, weighing on me pretty heavily. Weddings in general, and I'm not going to go into it in detail in this, but weddings in general brought up a lot of things for me about gender and um, like heterosexuality and homosexuality and queerness and just a lot of identity issues. Um, but anyhow, we go to this meeting, and we've been going to these meetings with the same couples. This is our last one, and we're all like sitting down, and the priest is there. He wasn't there for the other ones because at these meetings you talk to 3 other married couples. I'll make a whole video about PreKana because it's actually really interesting. But anyhow, the priest was there for this final meeting, our graduation or whatever. And he brought up the survey because it's new. And he was like, what do you guys think of the survey? Did you find it useful or whatever? And the other questions, like, yeah, like it brought up like stuff about money and raising your kids, like how are you going to raise them, in what religion are you going to baptize them, how are you dealing with in-laws. Like, it brought up like a good amount of points. So for the most part, the survey was pretty good, actually, I thought. However, this had been festering, and now I had the opportunity to confront the priest about this question. And so I basically said, overall, I thought it was useful, but I am confused about the church's stance because I don't understand the question, do you suspect someone is gay? And how it would be treated differently since the church wants all gay people to marry someone of the opposite gender. And the priest and I get into not like a debate, but he's flustered by the question. And then I'm like, because I put no and Stan put no, but I'm bisexual. So we didn't suspect anything. Stan knows I'm bi. And outed myself to the priest and the other church members in our meeting. And this took the priest back a bit. And he was basically like, well, yeah, but just because you like women doesn't mean you need to pursue them now that you're in a committed relationship. And I said, yeah, that would be true of all relationships that are exclusive. If I were straight and with a man, I wouldn't be, if we were exclusive, dating other guys. So I don't see how it's different. And he couldn't think of a reason either. But my point to this story is that with my privilege of being able to go through this process of getting married in the church, I was able to have this conversation and others with people in the church and with the priest about being queer and Catholic and the issues that come with it. Because it's very hard to be a part of something that doesn't fully accept who you are in its doctrine, even if in its even if you agree with the premise of the religion and you believe in the religion and you believe in the overall messages of the religion, it's it's very upsetting. Yeah, and that's a good question. I don't know. I think maybe they will add a question later about if you suspect your partner is trans, because the Catholic Church is still thinking in a two-gender perspective, and obviously there are more than two genders. But even if you're just strictly speaking about trans men and trans women, I don't know. I don't know what the doctrine is on that. So that will be interesting, because you could be like a trans man and date a woman, and it would be straight. But I don't know if the church would have an issue with it, because that's a great question. I don't know. I would be interested. If anybody else knows, feel free to either pop it in the chat, or because we did this randomly live, put it in the comments. I would be fascinated to know. I'll try to look that up. Stan says, does it say anything about being transgender in the Bible? I don't believe so. So maybe they'll be okay with it. If they're not, then it's clear that it's just complete BS from the church, rather than being about the Bible at all. As I said before, it's cherry picking to an extreme degree to base your homophobia off of the Bible. Unless you are so fundamentalist and actually live by everything Leviticus says, I do not understand how you can continue to be homophobic based on the Bible. It makes no sense. Other things in the Old Testament that we don't follow anymore are stoning kids for not listening to their parents. That's not accepted now. It's just bewildering. Absolutely bewildering that this is still an issue. So I kind of wanted to finish up the video by talking about why I haven't left the church, even though I have. This is not the only qualm I have with the church, but why I haven't left. And I think the reason I haven't left the Catholic Church is because I agree with the love your neighbor as yourself, and love God, 2 commandments of the New Testament. I also believe in the Catholic interpretation of the Holy Trinity and the Eucharist, and mostly the interpretation that you have to do good in order to get into heaven. That distinguishes Catholicism from many other versions of Christianity. Not that they're telling you to do wrong by any means, but the standard is basically don't break the rules and have faith in God. Versus if you lived that way, you just didn't break the rules and had faith, it would not be enough to get you into heaven. And I kind of agree with that interpretation of heaven, and that interpretation of the Bible. I think there's biblical evidence to support that viewpoint. And I think because of that viewpoint, Catholics are more able to, or not able to, but are pretty willing to give and support the needy. And you can see this in the studies of different religions and their viewpoints on things like the safety net in America, like welfare and disabilities and health insurance. Catholics tend to be more supportive. The majority of Catholics support those issues. The majority of fundamentalists and evangelical people don't. And I do think some of it comes down to the not needing to do good, just needing to not do bad. And I think to walk in Jesus's shoes is to be accepting of everybody and to help as much as you can and to give of yourself to others. And that's why homophobia and Catholicism do not mesh. They don't mesh because everything else about Catholicism is about love, acceptance, giving, forgiving, and loving. And that's why I stay, but it's also why it stings more when things like this happen. And stings more when statements from the Vatican come out like this. And personally, I feel like if for some reason God is homophobic, it's not a God I want to pray to anyway. Because that's not a nice God. And I have no need to bow down to a non-accepting person. Or being, rather. But anyhow, thank you for listening to this kind of thrown together rant. As I said, I didn't want to edit it out. I kind of wanted to just get some thoughts, throw some thoughts out there. I might make a more official video once I'm less emotional about all of this and can present it in a more fact-based way. But I wanted to do it live, so it's unfiltered and just kind of get a feel for what you all think. So again, if you have any thoughts about any of this, leave it in the comments down below. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.